All right. Hello and welcome. I am joined again today by Alison Cozad from Aimpoint Digital, and we're excited to have a reprise of our last discussion before Informs. And now on the other side of the conference, maybe looping back to some of our conversations and observations from the conference. So, Alison, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm excited to get going here.
Great. Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be back. I had a really good time at the conference and always an added bonus to get to spend some time with you there.
Likewise, likewise. So we left off our last conversation talking about the combination of AI and OR, companion mode, chatbot interfaces. Ryan and I hosted a talk, in between time about kind of what it looks like in our ecosystem around decision systems, and just what it means for accelerating model development across the board. What are your thoughts now on the other side of the conference? How did you see that manifest in some of the talks that were given, or even some of the companies that were attending?
Great. Great topic. I love the idea of a companion mode to an optimizer to help you understand it, to help you probe the optimization problem a little bit more. And I think we really got to see this as a headliner with the Edelman Award. Often referred to as the Nobel Prize of OR. I don't know if you've heard
I have
that
heard that.
reference. Yeah, yeah. So Microsoft won the Edelman Award, and they did really cool work in optimization for cloud fulfillment. So they mixed a lot of technologies together to really make a system that replaces kind of a segmented manual process with the goal of really cutting cycle fulfillment time. And they nailed that. But what I really loved was they also made kind of their companion mode chatbot interface. And they did this using OptiGuide, and they really worked with subject matter experts to understand what questions are you asking over and over of your optimizer, and how can we make sure that OptiGuide is answering that really specifically. And it was really cool to see that translate not only into a really functional tool that helped with uptake, that helped with users really understanding the solution and actually implementing it. But it was cool to see it on a big stage, getting to win this Edelman Award.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was really interesting in general to just kind of pull that thread a little bit more, that there
Mhm.
was a lot of more focus, it felt like, on how these systems actually serve the business side of the house at this conference, more so than I've seen in the past, which I know you and I have always been very passionate about that side. So it was fun to see that kind of come through. I think a lot more of the talks, and I'm sure that was a combination of kind of influence from the conference organizers, right, and also just kind of the way the industry has been trending. But what other trends did you see that were prominent, or maybe diving deeper into that one in the other parts of the conference that you attended, or talks that you went to?
No, I think that's a really good point. And maybe taking a step back at, what is this conference informs analytics? There's also a fall one that tends to
Yep.
be bigger in terms of numbers, but that actual like practical, how does it kind of work into the business is really where this conference I think shines. Like you really get to see the practical nitty gritty of, yes, you can write this beautiful, sophisticated optimization algorithm, but how do you get people to use it? How do you get it to actually affect decisions? And I think more and more we're getting to see this like practical side and kind of
Yep.
peek behind the curtain of understanding how to get business uptake, how to get stakeholders excited even early on in the process. And sometimes that is knowing that there's going to be a chatbot in the end that's
Yep.
going to help them understand the solution. So maybe that optimization is a little less intimidating. Like I think, having that wrapper and knowing that they're not just going to be, a solution isn't going to just be dumped upon them, that they now
Yep.
have to understand, which might be more complex than they can understand while on the phone with a trader and trying to
Yep.
make that decision. But they have that chatbot to really, speak their language, give them the answer in a way that they understand, and help them probe the solution a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that was like that has always been a nice part about this conference for me too. I think when before Ryan and I started Nextmv, we actually went to Informs Analytics in, I believe it was Austin, as part of Grubhub, and we presented there. And I just remember thinking it was really cool to see the likes of like Lyft and Uber and Wayfair and these companies that are very prominent consumer brands, right? In this conference that was like relatively small, actually, like in terms of like navigating was a lot easier than say like a Snowflake conference or something like that.
Right.
And in a good way, right? So because you could actually talk with practitioners that were doing similar problems to you. I remember we had a packed room talking about how we were doing like ETAs at
Mm.
Grubhub because everyone was kind of really interested in that, delivery wars space at the time. But I really feel like that's an interesting aspect of this conference is that there is like a tight-knit community around some of these problems, and there is camaraderie kind of across the industry for solving them. I
Yeah.
know also like this conference tends to be a big community event in a lot of different ways with the gala and also with a few of the societies meeting. I believe you attended the Worms events when we were there. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and kind of how that all went down at the conference?
Great. Yeah. I always make a point to put worms on my calendar. And for those who haven't heard about it, it is Women in OR and MS, which is Operations Research and Management Sciences. And it's a really great place to network. They always make a point of having cocktails and conversations, usually that Monday. And that's the first thing that's on my calendar for Informs. Everything else has to work around that. I find that really valuable. It's a really great place to network and meet people. Although I was a little disappointed my first year when I learned that people didn't take on worm sonas or pick their favorite worm. Mine, of course, would be red wiggler. I don't know if you have a favorite
I
worm. They're
I mean,
the
I think I'm gonna give it a
cushiest.
glowworm only because that's the first thing that
Ooh,
came to my head, and it seems exciting and effervescent.
perfect. Yes. Yes. You are the glowworm. I can be the red wiggler in my cushy compost pile. But Worms is a great place to kind of go to these conversation or go to these cocktails and conversation. Ann Robinson gave it this year and really kind of, gave a motivational speech on, really a solid reminder of you deserve to be here and, take the time to articulate your strategic vision, which is something that, taking a step back and I need to think through and always make sure to know that this network and networking is really your superpower. So take the time to lean into that.
Yeah.
um,
No, I love that. And I think it's like it's nice also within like a conference setting to be able to find a smaller group. I know when I was at when we did Y Combinator early on in Nextmv, we had like a women's founder group. And that was like really nice for the same reason. It was like a smaller format meeting as part of this like, much bigger group of people. Where you could get into some deeper topics, right? Or just different different layers of like the work that you were doing in a meaningful way. So I always
yeah,
find that really good.
I like that. And there was so that usually in the morning on Tuesday, there's also Worms breakfast to kind of just, again, network, get some mentoring. It usually tends to be a smaller group. And this year we covered everything from like perimenopause and how to manage that at work and like how that change is affecting you, whether it's, breaking down some of your people pleasing tendencies
Yep.
or, adjusting how you want to schedule your really strategic things from your more operational
Yep.
tasks and things along those lines. And I got to say, it is a breath of fresh air to just be talking about that in a business conference.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like how are you as a woman showing up to work, right? And like
Yes.
and how does that work in that environment? Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I know you're also part of the organizing committee, so maybe this is a good like segue into that. So what are your hopes and wishes for the conference going forward? Like how do you see like maybe the environment changing? Do you see more people coming into the space? Like where do you think informs analytics will go next?
I think that's a good question. I think over the years, one big shift that's kind of been happening is really in that analytics plus space. So I think Informs has shifted from being very optimization focused to kind of opening up the door to like there are a lot of analytics that help make decisions and that help in this space. But one thing that we tested out this year that I really loved, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it, was having kind of those workshops and training sessions on Tuesday. So in the
Yep.
afternoon on Tuesday, there were a number of parallel workshops to really kind of add that additional, more formal training element. And this helps people learn something. It maybe helps people kind of justify going to the conference because there is a formal training aspect, and
Yep.
in addition to kind of the seminar style. Be curious to know what you thought about that.
Yeah, I unfortunately I feel like we are a bit biased just because as vendors we were kind of sitting there and kind of changed the booth in a lot of ways. But I think it is I think the reformatting of that and also pulling some of the workshops for the vendors into Sunday versus Saturday was a really big like a nice addition because I think a lot of people did actually come to the conference on Sunday in order to see like the keynote and like and some of the initial things there. So it was nice to be able to have that interaction point on Sunday rather than on Saturday as it's been in the past. I think it just gets more people involved. And I also think for a business conference because it is more on the business side and like operating in industry, I it's nice to kind of have that more focus on like a during work week hours. I think like the annual conference is a little bit more heavy on the academic side, and so it makes sense to have like a little bit more over the weekend there because for the exact opposite reason, right? They can't miss their classes,
Yep.
right? And all those types of things. So I really appreciated that. I thought that was really nice. And I think we can just do, I think we can continue to do more in that space. Like I love getting hands-on, with technology, making it more real. Like how do we actually get it into the hands of users faster? How do we expand our user base? I think those are all interesting questions as we go forward in the decision intelligence, decision system ecosystem. So
And speaking of that, there was one, and this kind of ties back to the trends that you were talking about, and it's just other ways to kind of incorporate Gen AI into your work process. And
yep.
Dr. Joseph Kazier was kind enough to share how they're starting to pull that in at Arizona State. So
Oh, cool.
evidently at Arizona State University, the president, Michael Crow, is really aggressively leaning into kind of an AI first initiative. So they're
Interesting.
integrating AI fully into their education. At no point in the syllabus can they forbid AI. Like it is your companion, even
Yeah,
learning and test taking. And that's a challenge,
that is a challenge.
if that, and one thing, that they're looking into is how do you make maybe test taking conversational with an AI bot?
Gotcha.
Um,
That's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Right. And so you can kind of check that, and the AI can kind of be your validator and maybe kind of help guide you to a solution. So it serves the purpose of assessing your skills while also helping you learn some more. And one thing that I thought was really cool that he's teaching right now is really decision making with AI. So not
Yep.
necessarily fully writing out your model, but like, how do I work through a problem? How do I test a hypothesis? How do I vet an idea
An
that I
idea.
have
Yeah.
in a way that isn't just having Claude or ChatGPT say, "You're doing great, Allison, and I think you're smart." But to really do it in a more thoughtful way where you're going through that. And so what he proposed was actually getting a decision-making framework. And this could
Yep.
be your favorite one, but he goes through Aristotle's insight loop, which
Okay.
has you clarify the question, kind of construct an initial hypothesis or
Yep.
model, collaborate to understand what you might be missing, challenge, so play
Challenge
devil's
it. Yeah.
advocate,
Yep.
get some corroborating evidence, and eventually codify it. But what he proposes is do all of that in your chatbot. So
Yep.
maybe you even provide the full Aristotle insight loop into the chatbot, all of the reference materials you have to date on the challenge you're trying to solve, and you start iterating and you like really argue and debate. So this
Yep.
was to kind of replace the philosophers that would debate an idea, and that was kind of how they came to a conclusion. But you're just doing this with
Yep.
your chatbot. And I think that's a really cool way to do it. I hadn't thought of that. You kind of have the chatbot guide you through,
Yeah, like
this
a process
process.
basically.
Yeah,
And like using it as kind of a way to do yeah, more a more interesting way to do that, basically that process, or interactive is the word I was looking for. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea. I mean, that's kind of how we tend to use it in code assist, I think, like in a lot of ways, right? If you think less formal, but but very much the
Mhm.
way a lot of folks use it for code assist, right? You'll ask it to do something and then you say, well, is that actually correct? Can you test it? Can you do X, Y, Z? So I think that is a super interesting one. And I am intrigued at how it'll continue to kind of permeate all of our work and also education. I think it's a really interesting and challenging topic in a lot of ways. So maybe one final question for you
Mhm.
before we wrap up is what were your thoughts on the Edelman Prize finalists? I know you touched on Microsoft's talk at the beginning, who obviously ended up winning the Edelman Award this year. Did any of the other ones stand out to you, or like were there any consistent themes? I know I have one observation, but I'll save it for the end.
Um, you know, didn't get a chance to see all of the presentations, but the thing that excited me the most was learning more about kind of the OptiGuide and use that Microsoft had. I don't
Yeah.
know if you saw similar trends with the other finalists. Be curious to hear what you think there too.
Yeah, I thought the most interesting thing was the combination of decision technologies for almost all of the
Hmm.
finalists. So nobody was using just like one technology. There was like a combination of different things that were happening, and they were serving really like serving a business need. And I think the observation I was mentioning before is just I find it really cool to see some big headline names at this conference that I don't think people really fully understand are operating in our space in a big way, right? So you obviously mentioned Microsoft. NVIDIA was also one of the finalists. I believe Google was also one of the finalists, and a few other really big organizations, right? And I think it's cool to see that. And maybe we don't get enough airtime as part of the AI ecosystem when you have folks like that that are presenting for these awards.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well said.
Well, Allison, thank you so much for coming and joining us yet again to kind of wrap up closing thoughts for the Informs Analytics Plus conference this year. Look forward to hosting you again.
Great. Thanks. It was great to chat with you.